in Tulsa. You know what I mean? Okay, so we'll get to that in a little bit. But there was a bit of a Friday night massacre. We'll get to that in a little bit. Speaking of getting to things, tomorrow, special primary coverage. So we've got a lot of important states, including Kentucky, who's going to take on Mitch McConnell. There's 3 interesting contenders there. Can't wait to see what's going to happen. As you can tell, our hosts are Ida Rodriguez, Benjamin Dixon, Michael Short, John Iderell, and Kasparian, JQ. That's me. But most importantly, Jamal Bowman. That's tomorrow. New York is tomorrow. There's a lot of really important races in New York. But Jamal, last poll, up by 10 against Elliot Engel. If he takes out that very powerful Democratic incumbent, here come Justice Democrats again. Do not miss the coverage. It's going to be action-packed, so that's tomorrow night. Before we get on with all the amazing news from over the weekend, let's see how we're doing. We got to stay strong and healthy and independent, help guys like Jamal, help change, help bring you the real news. TYT.com/. Oh my God, we're so close to 100,000. Now the reality is we got to get to 200,000, which is luck on that. But can I see 100,000? Can I see it? I love you guys. TYT.com/go. Casper.
All right. Let's start off with John Bolton and his latest with Martha Raddatz. So let's do it.
The president has referred to himself as a stable genius. Is that what you saw?
Really? How can anybody call himself a stable genius? He did say it a couple times when I was in his presence, and I just didn't react to it.
That was Donald Trump's former national security advisor, John Bolton, who, of course, is releasing a tell-all book about his time within the administration. And he did not mince words when it comes to the upcoming election and his unwillingness to support Donald Trump because he's an unhinged maniac. But remember, that doesn't take away from the fact that John Bolton himself is also an unhinged maniac in his own ways, which we'll get to in just a minute. But here is what Bolton is planning when it comes to the upcoming election.
My conclusion is clear. I don't think he should be president. I don't think he's fit for office. I don't think he has the competence to carry out the job. I don't think he's a conservative Republican. I'm not going to vote for him in November. Certainly not going to vote for Joe Biden either. I'm going to figure out a conservative Republican to write in.
So, Cenk, he's going to write in a conservative Republican. I thought that maybe there was some possibility that he would vote for Biden. There's so many of these never Trump Republicans who have decided to rally in support of Biden just to get Trump out. But that's not what Bolton's doing. And look, I say that Bolton's an unhinged maniac in his own ways because he was honestly a negative influence when it comes to national security. He wanted to get Trump to have a much more negative relationship with North Korea. He wanted to invade North Korea. He wanted to invade Iran. So whenever it comes to his thoughts on foreign policy, I can't help but roll my eyes. I'm happy he's not in the Trump administration anymore, but that doesn't mean that some of the criticisms that he has toward Trump aren't valid. They are valid. And he sees Trump for the absolute incompetent moron that he is.
Yeah, so let's take it one at a time. In terms of anything Bolton says, you always take it with a grain of salt, given his track record. He's not well known for honesty either. But that's our job, to break it down for you guys and say, okay, what makes sense and what doesn't, what has backing and evidence and facts behind it and what doesn't, and we'll walk you through that. And then in terms of just a quick comment on the stable genius stuff, this is more about the press than it is about Bolton. So the Democrats suck, and so they didn't stay on the fact that he called himself a stable genius, when in reality, anyone who calls themselves a very stable genius is a lunatic. And if they'd stayed on that issue, they could have gotten clarity on it. We did. We even have T-shirts. Probably our best T-shirt is Very Stable Genius at shoptyt.com. We'll put the link down below. So we've been making fun of him for years on that. But when Bolton says it, all of a sudden the press is like, oh, that is a good point. Yeah, who does call themselves a stable genius? Oh, God damn it. It's like progressives are invisible. And something counts only when an establishment Republican or an establishment Democrat says it. In this case, Bolton is more of an establishment Republican. So in terms of his him saying that he's not going to vote for Donald Trump, of course, okay. And look, he probably lives in Maryland or Virginia. I don't know, and boy, do I not want to know. And so it's probably not going to matter. If he thinks it matters, he'll vote for Biden. Trump and him hate each other now, and he won't have any hesitation voting for Biden, because Biden in reality does help guys like Bolton start wars historically. So I don't think that'll be an issue for him at all. But a vote against the president that he served as longest national security advisor under Trump is obviously a blow to him from a PR perspective. For whoever still considers themselves a quote unquote real conservative, and that's very few people left in the country, yeah, this will hurt Trump with those folks.
So in the next clip, Bolton talks a little bit about what he's hoping for the future of the country and what he's hoping will happen to Trump following his first term.
How do you think history will remember Donald Trump?
I hope it will remember him as a one-term president who didn't plunge the country irretrievably into a downward spiral we can't recall from. We can get over one term. 2 terms I'm more troubled about.
So I think he's right in that it would be disastrous if Donald Trump were able to carry out a second term. But I do think that when it comes to certain actions that Trump has already taken within his administration, the damage is done and it's not easily reversible. So the business that farmers have lost because of his nonsensical trade wars, the relationships that he completely damaged with longtime allies of the United States, the vulnerability of our democracy, I think, is really on full display right now. And I don't know. I don't know if we can undo some of the damage that he's done. With that said, I think that Bolton is right. I'm really hoping that he is going to be remembered as a one-term president and that he doesn't continue the damage that he's already done.
So I agree with you and Bolton in different ways. So yes, I agree with you that a lot of damage has already been done. Because think about it from this perspective, guys. If you're a United States ally, can you really rely on us anymore? Because, all right, let's say Biden wins and they get back to what they perceive to be sanity. How do they know that another Trump isn't going to win next time? Well, that's a great question. And so, by the way, if he loses, he hasn't served 2 terms. That doesn't mean he can't run again. So, if you're sitting there as a U.S. ally, you think now half the country in America is nuts, and they could regain power at any time, and then we lose any kind of not only alliance but stability and sanity coming out of the largest power in the world. And that is some serious damage, let alone all the things that he did in giving away trillions of dollars to the wealthy. That income inequality some of that cannot be recovered. And I've got a 1,000 things to add to that list. On the other hand, Bolton is right that if he does win re-election, I'm in the camp of it's the worst case scenario. I think democracy's gone. He's trampled upon rule of law, fired anyone who might investigate him. He'll end this thing. I don't think it's hyperbolic at all. I think it's very literal. I think he'll lock up his political opponents and will destroy what it means to be America. So it is existential question on the second term.
So he also criticizes Trump on foreign policy. This is where you should be skeptical of anything that John Bolton says, because John Bolton, of course, has never seen a war that he doesn't love. He wants to invade any and all countries. And there's no question about that. So in this next clip, he does critique Trump's foreign policy. And then when we come back from that clip, I'll give you some of the specific details of what he's alleging, some of which are actually incredibly problematic. Take a look.
How would you rate Trump's ability to make a deal in North Korea?
Well, I think it turned out clearly at this point to be 0.
How would you describe Trump's relationship with Vladimir Putin?
I think Putin thinks he can play him like a fiddle.
What happened to the deal maker in those situations?
Well, the president may well be a superb deal maker when it comes to Manhattan real estate. Dealing with Syria, dealing with arms limitation treaties on strategic weapons, dealing in many, many other international security issues are things far removed from his life experience.
Do you think U.S. national security is stronger or weaker because of President Trump?
I think we're in a weaker position around the world. I think we have given up leadership in a wide variety of areas. I saw the Trump administration as a chance to correct it, and we corrected precious little.
Okay, no one should ever take any foreign policy advice from John Bolton. John Bolton still, till this day, thinks it was a great decision to invade Iraq in 2003. Till this day, he refuses to admit that that war has been a complete and utter disaster. So let me just get that out of the way. Secondly, during the interview, he said the following: the North Koreans, as perhaps with Iran and China and Russia as well, think that if they can separate Trump from his advisors, they can get him to make a deal. They see him as somebody who's fundamentally not aware of the trade-offs he's making. Now, that statement is true. As we know, Donald Trump, in negotiating with North Korea, immediately promised like the moon and the stars to Kim Jong-un, including ending the military exercises in South Korea. And look, I think that those military exercises can definitely be seen by the North Koreans as provocation. And I think that it makes sense to have a debate about whether or not you end that kind of display. But the reason why I'm bringing that up and partially agreeing with Bolton is because what Trump did in the negotiation was like, yeah, we'll end the war games. We're going to end the war games. OK, you agree? You agree you're going to denuclearize? Oh, you are? OK, great. Like that was Trump's way of negotiating. When you hold things as leverage in order to get, like, on paper, an agreement, a real deal indicating that North Korea will take steps to denuclearize. But Donald Trump doesn't actually care about any of that. Donald Trump cares about his chances of getting reelected, and he cares about the aesthetics of being a leader. He doesn't actually want to conduct true leadership and get a real negotiation, a real deal accomplished. And that was, one of the main points in Bolton's book that I think actually does make a lot of sense. In case after case, in foreign policy issue after foreign policy issue, Donald Trump doesn't actually do anything that really would benefit America. What he does is he pushes for things that would look good, the photo ops, the ability to look like a tough negotiator and deal maker. But everything behind that is just hollow. And unfortunately, in some cases, he managed to do things that were actually pretty terrible, like ripping up the Iran nuclear deal, something that Bolton, by the way, is very much in favor of, which is why I'm skeptical of Bolton's foreign policy advice.
Okay, this is where you take the giant grain of salt or a boulder of salt with what John Bolton is saying. So when he says Trump reduced American leadership in the world, by leadership, he means aggressive wars that we start. So there's no one worse on foreign policy than John Bolton, the worst of the worst on neocons and hawks. So I don't want that kind of leadership. I want the kind of leadership that actually respects our allies and brings the world together. By the way, does trade so we make more money, not less money. Our wages go up and protects American workers. Now, Bolton doesn't believe in that, neither does Trump, but for different reasons. So now the part that he's right about is he's a buffoon. In fact, he underestimates how much of a buffoon Trump is. So he still says, oh, maybe he could make good deals in Manhattan real estate. No, he can't. He went bankrupt 6 times. No, what the buffoon that you saw in foreign policy and domestic policy is the same buffoon that went bankrupt 6 times. He couldn't put together 2 sentences, 2 thoughts. There's no way he could make an effective deal, a moron of epic proportions. And so when it comes to dealing with our adversaries abroad, some of it might be just self-dealing in the case of Turkey and Russia and to some degree China. And the rest of it is and I nailed it. He cares more about the optics, the picture that's being taken, than the actual deal, which leads to disastrous deals.
And then one final video for you, because, the big question is, everyone can see who Donald Trump is. Everyone knows how incompetent and power hungry he is. Why would anyone agree to work for him? And so Bolton's asked that question, and here's how he answers.
You supported Donald Trump during the 2016 election. You watched his first 15 months in office. What did you think of the job he was doing up to that point?
I think I made a mistake. I think I overrated the chances to make this into a coherent, rational, systematic decision-making process to advance American interest. But I had confidence going in that many of the stories were distorted. That turned out not to be right.
You say that you were astonished by what you saw. A president for whom getting reelected was the only thing that mattered, even if it meant endangering or weakening the nation?
Well, I think he was so focused on the reelection. Longer-term considerations fell by the wayside. And I think it became very clear to foreign leaders that they were dealing with a president who just wasn't serious about many of these issues.
So, Cenk, he felt that maybe he's the one, out of all of these people who had been in and out of Trump's administration by the time that Bolton joined, he thought, no, maybe I'm the one that can, change things and make Trump listen to me, make this administration run in a way that's cohesive, that makes sense, that lacks the chaos that we're seeing today. It's just hilarious to me because, sure, I think that he did believe that, but I think a big part of it, which he probably doesn't have enough self-awareness for, is that he's a power-hungry dog, just like the rest of them who decided to join this administration. And by the way, people like Pompeo, who continue to serve in Trump's administration, knowing full well how unhinged Trump is and how there's complete and utter chaos within that administration as we speak. Doesn't care. Yeah. He'd rather have the power.
I think the difference between Bolton and Trump on this ground is how sophisticated they are in lying. Donald Trump is just too stupid to be sophisticated, whereas Bolton's a very sophisticated liar. So when he says he didn't know how stupid Donald Trump was when he was going in there, I don't believe that for 1 second. I believe that Bolton did know how stupid he was. And so why did he do it? For two reasons. One, because if you're the national security advisor, you get to cash checks for at least another decade. You get speaking engagements, you get the illusions of power, and for a little while, the reality of power. You get to write tell-all books and make a ton of money. You get to be relevant in Washington, which is the one drug that they're all addicted to. But the second reason he went in is because he thought Trump was an idiot, and he thought I'll easily manipulate him into starting as many wars as I want. Now, that didn't prove to be the case because there's pushback from other advisors and even from people like Tucker Carlson on Fox News. He didn't anticipate that there would be pushback from other people. He's right. If he was the only one in the room with Donald Trump, then he'd be able to manipulate him into any war. He'd be able to manipulate him into punching himself in the face because that's how stupid Donald Trump is. So that's the main difference between Bolton and Trump.
Yep. All right. Well, we're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, speaking of turnover within government, another person just got fired by the Trump administration. Who is it? What are the reasons? There are some mysterious parts of this story, but we're going to break it down on a granular level. You don't want to miss it. Come right back.
We need to talk about a relatively new show called the Republic, or UNFTR. As a Young Turks fan, you already know that the government, the media, and corporations are constantly peddling lies that serve the interests of the rich and powerful. But now there's a podcast dedicated to unraveling those lies, debunking the conventional wisdom. In each episode of the Republic, or UNFTR, the host delves into a different historical episode or topic that's generally misunderstood or purposely obfuscated by the so-called powers that be, featuring in-depth research, razor-sharp commentary, and just the right amount of vulgarity. The UNFTR podcast takes a sledgehammer to what you thought you knew about some of the nation's most sacred historical cows. But don't just take my word for it. The New York Times described UNFTR as consistently compelling and educational, aiming to challenge conventional wisdom and upend the historical narratives that were taught in school. For as the great philosopher Yoda once put it, "You must unlearn what you have learned." And that's true whether you're in Jedi training or you're uprooting and exposing all the propaganda and disinformation you've been fed over the course of your lifetime. So search for UNFTR in your podcast app today and get ready to get informed, angered, and entertained all at the same time.
Chat. TYT, flaws and all. Quote, damn it, LOL. That apparently went out during the break. Anyways, Harish Ramaya writes in, all YouTube Super Chat here. Hellboy better than Bunker Boy, reference to my interview with Ron Perlman and taking on Trump and Ted Cruz, etc. Jorge Fontan writing, I early voted in New York 16th for Bowman. So did my mom, my sister, brother, and his wife. I literally do not know a single person who supports Engel. Good luck, Jamal. Right there with you. Okay, definitely support Jamal Bowman in that election coming up tomorrow. In fact, you can start voting, obviously, today. Everybody can early vote. Aaron Graham says, shout out to everyone who signed up for the Tulsa rally but didn't show. Side note, K-pop wins, always. In fact, we've got a story coming up about that in just a second. And Michael Napin says, about the shop, can I get an Of Course t-shirt after being a member, a viewer and a member for about a decade? Michael, I believe that there is an Of Course t-shirt. I've seen it. Unless they pulled it from the shop, it should exist. ShopTYT.com. Check it out. The great social distancing masks. And speaking of which, now, all of a sudden, for members, a members-only jacket. I love it. I got mine 2 days ago. It's super cool. And if you're a member, you got to go to tyt.com/notice. So it has a link to how only members can buy it, okay? So the join button below if you're watching on YouTube to become a member. And actually, in this case, you got to, I think, do it through the site, tyt.com/join to become a member, then tyt.com/notice to get that badass members-only jacket. Anna's Margarita Salt writes in, today's a good day, 23,000 steps up Runyon Canyon and also around Hollywood Reservoir. Gave a $20 tip to my Dunkin' Donuts Frappuccino. Wow. Buying TYT members jacket. She's already on it, or she or he, I don't know, but I love it. And just gave $1,000 to tyt.com/go because you are truly needed. Love you all. We love you too. You make all the difference in the world. In fact, let's take a quick look at the thermometer, see where we are with that. If we can get it up. I know we're having some issues today. Oh, hey there, 100,997. We just need $3 to get to 101. Can I see 101,000? tyt.com/go. And we got so much more for you guys. Let's keep it. Sorry, one super last thing. A lot of people ask for the reading materials that we talked about, the books we talked about in the Juneteenth special on Friday. If you sign up for our newsletter, we're going to send out that list through the newsletter. Okay, we got a lot of great information there. tyt.com/newsletter to sign up for that and get the links to all those books. All right, Anna, what's next?
All right. The Trump administration has fired Jeffrey Berman. He was the U.S. attorney for the Southern District of New York, and the way he was fired was strange to say the least. It happened late last Friday night, and typically politicians do things like that when they're hoping that it wouldn't get much news attention. But of course, the press was paying attention, and there are questions flying about why he was fired and what the motivations were of the Trump administration. So again, people are asking, what is behind this? What's going on? What's the drama? Which means that we're in time for As the White House Turns.
Made some very big mistakes.
I asked for his resignation.
I'm disappointed in the Attorney General.
So how did we learn about this, Cenk? Well, we learned about it through the Justice Department at first. They announced late Friday night that Berman would be stepping down, only for Berman himself to issue an extraordinary statement indicating that he had no intention of doing so. By Saturday night, after receiving 2 separate letters from the Justice Department demanding his departure, at that point, Berman had officially resigned, having secured the appointment of his chosen deputy as his successor rather than the Justice Department's preferred pick. So luckily, the person who's serving in his place right now is not a Trump lackey, is not a Barr loyalist, is not someone who's looking to end investigations that need to be done. It's actually Audrey Strauss, who is, again, Berman's own chief deputy. And Audrey will be serving in that role until possibly Trump nominates someone or Audrey gets replaced. So Trump tried to distance himself from all of this at first, but it was pathetically obvious that he was lying. The Atlantic reports that Donald Trump declared himself to be, quote, not involved just hours after Attorney General William Barr announced that the president himself dismissed Berman. Okay, so I want to get to what the possible reasons are for why Berman was forced out. But before I get to that, I wanted to get your thoughts on how we learned about this, Cenk.
Yeah. So I want to go through the timeline because there's two very, very clear, provable lies, which is then going to get into a rare agreement that I have with Chuck Schumer, the leader of the Democrats in the Senate. So first of all, Barr wrote that Berman had stepped down on Friday night. That's just a lie. Berman had not stepped down, and then Berman publicly said, I didn't step down. But Barr issued that statement, again, inarguable. So he flat out lied, and obviously investigators should ask why the top law enforcement official put out a lie like that. And then Berman says, I didn't step down. So then Barr puts out a second statement saying, oh, yeah, well, then we're firing you. And I talked to Trump, and Trump fired you himself. Now, why is that? Why did Barr have to do that? Because the only person who has the authority to fire the U.S. attorney in the Southern District of New York or anywhere is the president. Barr cannot legally fire Berman. Only Trump can legally fire Berman. And Barr very clearly said, yes, Trump fired you. Okay. Then they asked Trump a couple hours later, as Anna pointed out. And he's like, no, I didn't. Okay, well, in that scenario, either Barr lied or Trump lied. Now, in that scenario, it's much more likely that Trump lied because he doesn't want his fingerprints on it, and he wants to be able to throw Barr under a bus later. It's something he does all the time. He tells him, fire Berman. He's working on a case that could cause me trouble. And then when they ask him, he's like, oh, I didn't fire him. Hey, that's the attorney general's job. That's not my job. And moron, you might have wanted to look into it. It actually turns out it is your job. You're the only one legally allowed to fire him. But as usual, even when he's breaking laws, he's just too careless to bother covering it up in an effective way. And so finally, Berman says he resigns once he gets that concession that it's going to be his deputy and not some Trump lackey who's going to take over. But the reality is, at that point, he didn't resign. He'd already been publicly fired. There's no ands, ifs, or buts about it. That resignation means absolutely nothing. You cannot resign after you've been fired. So that's more like
publicly
a stanza move. That's all.
Right. I mean, Barr already put out a press release saying that he was out. And then at that point, he resigned. So you're right. It's not really resignation. He was fired publicly before he even had an opportunity to resign. But I do want to go through some of the potential reasons why Berman was targeted by the Trump administration. And we'll start with the most benign reason that's come up in the press. And it has to do with one of Trump's friends, Jay Clayton, who apparently had been eyeing that position. So The Atlantic writes that according to Barr's original statement, Trump had decided to appoint Jay Clayton, currently the chairman of the Securities and Exchange Commission, to the job. Clayton had recently golfed with the president at Trump's club in Bedminster, New Jersey, and had expressed interest in the U.S. attorney job. So let me just stop right there because I describe that as the most benign reason. And that alone, under any other administration, is a scandal, right? Favor for a favor, like I'm going golfing with this guy, he's eyeing a job, so I'm just going to go ahead and push someone out and give him this job because he's my buddy. Like that, in any other administration, would not be described as benign. So I just want to be clear about that. But in the context of the Trump administration, go ahead.
Sorry, I got to add one thing to the Clayton part of the story. Of course, Trump is not doing this for his golf buddy. He's doing it to get rid of Berman, which we'll talk more about in a second. But when it comes to Clayton, why Clayton? He's the head of the SEC, so obviously he's a lawyer. But the U.S. Attorney's Office, they're prosecutors. And unless you've already been a prosecutor, you're almost never appointed as U.S. Attorney. And so why is he picking Clayton? One of the banks that Clayton represented as an attorney was Deutsche Bank. And so he is known to be very soft on Wall Street, and specifically Deutsche Bank, which the Southern District of New York might have been investigating, and that might have been the reason why Berman was fired in the first place. So if you're going to fire a guy like Berman, you need a guy like Clayton to come in to clean up and make sure that you and Deutsche Bank are free and clear.
Exactly. So a potential investigation into Deutsche Bank could also be one of the reasons, which is a more nefarious reason to get rid of Berman. And then there was also, some other nefarious reasons, again, listed by The Atlantic. Berman's office was responsible for the prosecution of Michael Cohen, Trump's former personal lawyer, and for the related investigation of figures associated with the Trump administration or organization. It also indicted Halk Bank, a Turkish government-owned bank accused of violating Iranian sanctions, causing friction between Trump and the Turkish president. So that's one other possibility. Trump didn't want to have his relationship with Erdogan damaged through this investigation, and so that played into a possible motive for getting rid of Berman.
Well, this is where the stories of today intersect, because John Bolton revealed just now that that Trump had told the leader of Turkey, Erdogan, hey, those are Obama's people prosecuting your guys in the Southern District of New York. I'll get rid of them and put in my people, and then you'll be okay. Bolton said it was actually one of the most shocking things that he heard in his entire time in the Trump era. He said no president that he's ever worked with or heard of would make a promise to do something like that, and it is literal obstruction of justice and totally illegal. And so, right as we're finding that out, Berman's actually fired, just like Trump promised the Turkish leader. So that's certainly another possibility. In fact, we've got a poll for you guys to ask you guys why you might have done it in a second.
Right, exactly. And then just to suss that out a little more, Berman's office was investigating another presidential lawyer, Rudy Giuliani, and the Halk Bank case is still ongoing. The most acute concern, therefore, is that Berman's firing was not retaliation for something he had already done, but an effort to prevent his office from doing something in the future. So the question that we have for you guys in the poll is, what's the real reason? What do you think is the real reason that Trump and Barr fired U.S. Attorney Berman? And you have all of the reasons, potential reasons in that list, because he prosecuted Michael Cohen, because he's investigating Giuliani, because he's looking into Deutsche Bank, because he promised the leader of Turkey he would fire him. We have a link in the description box below. So just click on that and you can participate in the poll, or you can go to tyt.com/polls/Berman. Yeah.
And just to be clear, Trump had already tried to stop that investigation of Halk Bank, and he was not able to. So he was stymied by that, and they have continued to pursue that. I don't think it's over Michael Cohen. You do not panic fire one of the most, well, actually the most important U.S. attorney outside of the Attorney General 4 months before an election for something he did in the past. You do it for what he's about to reveal in the next 4 months. So when Chuck Schumer says that he's going to look to have the Judiciary Committee look into it, the Office of Professional Responsibility at the DOJ should look into it, and the Inspector General at the DOJ should look into it, he's absolutely right. That is the minimum place to start, but that is where he should start. And then if they, I don't think it could probably be done in a 4 to 6 month window, but if it can, they should definitely impeach Barr, because there's absolutely no question that Barr lied at a minimum once, but probably twice about this incident. And by the way, when asked over and over again, so what is your official legitimate reason for firing Berman? Barr has had no comment. They didn't even bother stating an official reason for firing him. They are so lazy and incompetent in their corruption. So it's not just Trump. Barr should definitely be impeached over this.
We'll be right back.
At TYT, we frequently talk about all the ways that big tech companies are taking control of our online lives, constantly monitoring us and storing and selling our data. But that doesn't mean we have to let them. It's possible to stay anonymous online and hide your data from the prying eyes of big tech. And one of the best ways is with ExpressVPN. ExpressVPN hides your IP address, making your activity more difficult to trace and sell to advertisers. ExpressVPN also encrypts 100% of your network data to protect you from eavesdroppers and cyber criminals. And it's also easy to install. A single mouse click protects all your devices. But listen, guys, this is important. ExpressVPN is rated #1 by CNET and Wired Magazine. So take back control of your life online and secure your data with a top VPN solution available, ExpressVPN. And if you go to expressvpn.com/TYT, you can get 3 extra months for free with this exclusive link just for TYT fans. That's expressvpn.com/TYT. Check it out today.
Super chat. First time super chatter, long time fan. I watch every day, so every day I can. And so happy to have a progressive voice in the media that I can rely on. We appreciate it. That's partly why we're doing tyt.com/go. If you can donate there as well, that would be amazing. Thank you. And then I wanted to give you a couple other comments here. Nicholas also writes, and says, my girlfriend is facing potential and her brother's certain deportation due to Trump. They're both amazing people with clean records. I never thought I'd ever vote for Biden, but Biden 2020, I guess. So that is the situation for a lot of folks. You know, when it's an existential question for you, all of a sudden voting for Biden seems a little bit more appealing, only to make sure that Trump is not in. Okay, last thing. Fat Bottom Pearls writes in, Anna, thank you for being so amazing. My daughter loves you and looks up to you so much. I couldn't have hoped for a better person for her to look up to. All of you are so great to us. We really appreciate it. Thank you for donating. Thank you for watching. Anna, let's keep going.
As coronavirus continues to spread rapidly, Trump admitted to wanting to suppress the numbers by slowing down the rate of testing. And we know this because we heard him say it from his own mouth during his rally in Tulsa. Take a look.
When you do testing to that extent, you're going to find more people. You're going to find more cases. So I said to my people, slow the testing down, please.
Understandably, that led to a lot of backlash because we already have 120,000 Americans who have lost their lives in the middle of this pandemic. There are record numbers in various states. Nearly 24 states have seen a pretty severe increase in the number of new coronavirus cases. Florida has just passed 100,000 cases. And even though the United States accounts for about 4% of the world's population, we unfortunately account for 25% of coronavirus deaths. And so it's a complete and utter disaster. And it's due to Donald Trump's incompetence, lack of compassion, and unwillingness to really be a leader when the country needs a leader to get us through this pandemic. So later he was asked by a reporter, hey, did you tell your people to slow down the testing? And guess what? He didn't deny it. Take a look.
On Saturday night, you said that you told your staff to slow the testing down to improve the numbers.
We do more testing than any country in the world by far, 25 million tests. Other countries do 1 million. We're doing so much testing, 25 million tests. Nobody thought that was possible.
But did you ask to slow it down?
If it did slow down, frankly, I think we're way ahead of ourselves, if you want to know the truth. We've done too good a job.
Look, he didn't answer the question, and that is an admission of guilt there. I have no question in my mind that he did not want more testing. We had done stories before his Tulsa rally where he admitted that more testing means more positive COVID outcomes, and he didn't want that. He thinks it makes him look bad. He doesn't like people wearing masks because, as he told the Wall Street Journal just last week, he believes that some people are wearing masks to make him look bad. Everything goes back to him. He doesn't care if your life is in danger. He doesn't care if another 120,000 Americans die from this virus. All he cares about is, how does this make me look? And maybe I can talk my way out of it. Maybe I can lie my way out of what so many Americans are experiencing right now.
Yeah, and I actually think you're being too kind to him. I don't think there's any debate at all. When he paused there, did you ask them to slow down the testing? And he's like, and then he said that the testing is making us look bad. Where's the question? There's no question. He definitely said it. He said it himself. He didn't deny it. And he went on to explain why testing is making him look bad. He So there's absolutely no question about it. Now, let me correct them on a couple of fronts and get to the most important part. First, per capita, there are actually several other countries that have tested more people than us. Russia has, Spain has, the UK has. And then for some countries like Germany, the reason they have not tested more per capita than us is because they tested so early and effectively, and they put in a regimen of testing that continues to this day that does contact tracing, that they had very few cases. So since they were so successful in fighting the virus, they didn't have to do as many tests of a mass amount of people like we did, because we bungled it for months while Germany, South Korea, and others got it almost exactly right. So if we had effective leadership like Angela Merkel, then we would have so many less deaths. Right now we're at 122,000 deaths. So let alone the number of cases, because he's saying like, oh, we're getting, but a lot of these things are not even that big a deal. Well, actually there's truth to that. Not everybody who gets coronavirus dies. In fact, for most people, it's not an extreme case. But we're not leading in just cases. We're also leading in deaths. And I'm pretty sure you can't fake that.
Exactly. And there's no denying it. I mean, the numbers speak for themselves. I'm going to go to the second graphic here and give you some specific examples of what various states are experiencing. So, for instance, Arizona health officials reported 2,592 new infections on Sunday alone. The state's total of cases has nearly doubled in 14 days. Florida reported 3,000 more COVID-19 cases on Sunday after reaching a new daily high of over 4,000 new infections the day before. And as I mentioned, Florida has now surpassed 100,000 cases of coronavirus. The governor DeSantis refuses to shut anything down. Now it's really up to leaders, or politicians, I should say, on a hyper local level to take matters into their own hands. And the city of Miami has just implemented mandatory mask wearing when people are out in public, because this situation is dire and there is no leadership on a federal level. And if you're living in a red state, likely no leadership on a state level either. New cases of the novel coronavirus are now rising in 23 states. That's according to Johns Hopkins University. The disease is steady in only 10 states and falling in 17. Health experts warn that spikes in infections in states like Florida and Arizona, both of which recorded new highs in daily infection rates over the weekend, are being driven by the public's waning willingness to avoid large gatherings and a reticence to wear masks. And Cenk, like, the anti-mask propaganda is unbelievable. It's just incredible to me. I'm hearing nonsensical things like, oh, masks give you this false sense of security and safety. If everyone wears masks, we're going to lower the number of new coronavirus cases by 80 to 85%, depending on which study you're looking at. Okay? Wear your damn mask and shut up. Why are people this should not be a polarizing issue. It should not be a polarizing issue. If you care about your life, if you care about your family members' lives, stop being a moron, turn Fox News off, and wear your damn mask. Why are people this difficult in this country? I don't get it. I just don't get it.
I actually think wearing seatbelts gives you a false sense of security. I prefer flying out of the front windshield. So, of course, it gives you actual security. It doesn't mean it gives you 100% security, but it improves your security by 85%. So that is much, much better. But Anna, you're absolutely right to focus on the mask, because that is the most gratuitous part of Trump's strategy. I understand, as a horrible a person as he is, that, hey, if he slows down the test, it gives you the optics of having less cases because you just didn't bother testing people. Now, in the long run, that actually creates more cases, more deaths, and even hurts his beloved stock market more. That's Trump being a moron, but I get the logical connection why he doesn't want the appearance of more cases, right? As monstrous as the results are. But for mass, but you would have less cases, and that would help your optics.
and you'd have less deaths, and that would help the economy, and that would help your chance at re-election. It's just that he thinks it makes people look weak. It makes him look weak. It makes Republicans look weak. And they're like, oh, yeah, I'll show you how manly I am by dying.
Yeah.
What an unbelievable moron. And the problem is his own followers are honestly even dumber than he is. So they think, oh, if that guy tells, you know how your mom says when you're a kid, hey, if somebody jumps off a bridge, would you do it? And it turns out a third of the country would. If Trump tells them to jump off a bridge, they would. He tells them to not wear a mask and expose their family to death, and they do it. That's amazing. We've lost a third of this country to criminal stupidity.
And it's not just about what Trump says. It's about how Trump's stupidity seeps into conservative media. And that propaganda is highly effective, especially on social media, where, you know, middle-aged moms across the country think they're getting their news. And it's just devastating. But anyway, and I mentioned middle-aged moms because I get frustrated at my own mom using Facebook to get news. Don't rely on Facebook for news. Please, please, I'm begging you guys. Stay safe and educate yourselves by relying on credible sources. But I do want to just go to Peter Navarro real quick. Let's take a look at what he had to say.
Now, Jake, it was tongue-in-cheek.
Did the president?
Come on now. That was tongue-in-cheek. Please.
I don't know that it was. I don't know that it was tongue-in-cheek at all.
I know it was tongue-in-cheek.
He has said similar things for months.
Tongue-in-cheek.
He has said similar things for months.
But you know what? We got.
But he has said similar things for months. That
over 30 million people unemployed. And we've seen over 100,000 people die because of the China Wuhan virus. Let's talk about some serious issues, Jake. I don't want to go there. I think there's some really important things. I'll break a little news for you.
I think testing is a very serious issue. I'm not the one making jokes about it. You're the one that said the president
it was a light moment.
The president was being tongue-in-cheek.
All right, we're 60 seconds into a tongue-in-cheek thing. Ask and answer.
Yeah, Cenk, you know, there's nothing funnier than 120,000 people who are dead in our own country because of Trump's incompetence and lack of leadership. So funny to joke around about slowing down testing to make Trump look good. These people are vicious, they're clowns, and we need them out. And by the way, once the Trump administration is over, I never want to see the Peter Navarros of the world again. Don't launder their image and make it seem as though they aren't absolute scum who deserve absolutely no power, period. We have to go to our post game. Go ahead, Cenk.
Yeah, just real quick, guys. So Peter Navarro is obviously full of crap. We just show you that he wasn't joking. But even if he was, remember on 9/11, about 3,000 people died. So far, 122,000 have died from coronavirus. If Bush was going around making jokes about 9/11, people would have lost their minds. So their best defense is Trump is such a monster that he doesn't mind kidding around about the death of over 100,000 Americans on his watch. All right, we have so many more stories, including Donald Trump clowning himself at that rally and Lincoln Project piling on, all in the post game. TYT.com/join. You got to watch that. We'll see you right now.
Thanks for listening to the full episode of the Young Turks. Support our work, listen ad-free, access members-only bonus content, and more by subscribing to Apple Podcasts at apple.co/TYT. I'm your host, Cenk Uygur, and I'll see you soon.